Bitcoin reached a fresh record high this week thanks to excitement over the launch of a pioneering exchange-traded fund based on the cryptocurrency. Fans are betting that regulators have turned a corner on the sector after years of unbending skepticism. And other investors are also coming in and treating Bitcoin as a safe hedge to inflation, despite its notorious volatility. Paolo Montesilio reports.
Hungarian artists erected this statue of Apple co-founder Steve Jobs more than a decade ago. At the same park in Budapest, there's a new attraction, a bust of Bitcoin's anonymous founder, known only by his pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto.
Andras, who commissioned this job, had the idea of polishing the face of the statue so that anyone looking at it sees their reflection. The basic concept of Bitcoin is that it belongs to everyone.
People who actually own Bitcoin have seen their fortunes rise and fall since its initial release in 2009. For now, they're up big. The world's leading cryptocurrency has reached an all-time high of more than $66,000. In April, the token was worth less than $30,000. The latest craze is fueled by the launch of the first Bitcoin exchange-traded fund in the US. Investors have flocked to the Proshares Bitcoin E-T-F, which reached more than $1 billion in assets in 2 days of trading. According to Bloomberg, that's the best launch for any ETF in Wall Street history. Bitcoin's appeal has also grown due to rising inflation.
If anything has changed in the last 6 months, it's that inflation expectations have risen and investors are looking for what they see as stores of value. And in theory, and in fact, certainly in Bitcoin's case, the supply here is limited, capped, whereas the supply of paper money, no, that isn't. I guess that's probably the biggest change.
More Bitcoin funds are expected to start trading in the US this month, with regulators becoming more tolerant toward crypto-linked assets. Wherever prices go, artists in the Hungarian capital say their tribute to Bitcoin is here to stay. Paolo Montesilio, TRT World.
Well, let's get more on this now with cryptocurrency analyst Daniele Bianchi. He's also a professor of finance at the Queen Mary University of London. Welcome back to the program, Daniele. So $66,000 for Bitcoin. We know the price has eased since it reached that record high. It's about $63,000 right now. But why are investors so excited about this new exchange-traded fund involving Bitcoin?
Thanks for having me. Well, that's a very good question. I think primarily because it's an easy way to get access to Bitcoin in the first place. So for essentially every type of investor now can access, every retail investor indeed, every institutional investor can easily access Bitcoin. So that's probably the reason why it's becoming so much popular. And as I said in the video, is perhaps one of the most popular ETF launch ever been.
That's right. And I think a lot of people are looking at this as a sign that perhaps US regulators are easing in terms of their concerns about Bitcoin. We know the Securities and Exchange Commission over in the US had been reluctant to approve ETF funds involving Bitcoin up until now. So what makes this different? Why do you think it's more acceptable in terms of regulators?
Well, again, that's a very good question. I don't think anything really changed. If anything changed, the regulatory approach, and perhaps also because this is a bit more a solid project than the one that has been proposed, over the last couple of years, really. So it's a combination of an easy approach from regulators and a more solid product. And the other aspect is that there were kind of lots of concerns to give access to every type of investors to Bitcoin. But it's probably becoming too popular to stop at this stage.
And we know that a lot of analysts are also seeing this as yet another sign that perhaps Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general are becoming more mainstream. Do you share that optimism as well? Is this yet another step towards Bitcoin becoming more normal, if you like?
I would say I have sort of a cautious optimism in the sense that it's still really at early stages from an investment perspective. If you take the size of Bitcoin vis-a-vis standard equity markets, it's still really a tiny fraction, but it's becoming more and more mainstream. And it's not just the ETF, is the CEO of Twitter that is openly supporting Bitcoin. more and more mainstream companies are fully invested in Bitcoin. So it's like a global phenomenon, really, not just the ETF on itself. But I would say I'm optimism.
Now, in terms of the price, we know Bitcoin is still highly volatile. It did reach $66,000 earlier this week, but earlier this year, it plunged to as low as around $30,000. It still is quite a risky asset, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Volatility is still massive compared to traditional asset classes, and it's here to stay. I'm expecting very high volatility towards the end of the year and perhaps the year after that. It's relatively much more liquid than traditional asset classes. So volatility is here to stay. So you have to be cautious. You have to be, very careful. But that doesn't necessarily, make the Bitcoin investment a bad one. Really depends on your risk aversion.
Okay, Professor Daniele Bianchi, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you for your analysis as always.